Next on the agenda, we have the approval of a brownfield plan for 50500 Mound Road. We have John Paul Ray, the Director of Planning and Economic Development, to give a presentation. First, we will entertain a motion to forward this, and then we'll take questions. We have a motion by Commissioner Duge, a support by Commissioner Kraft, and with that, let's hear what you have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate the opportunity to brief the commissioners today. As we provided you with a brief informational synopsis last time that we were here, we are in the process of scoping out a brownfield redevelopment plan for the property located at 50500 Mound Road. Ultimately, we are in a series of negotiations not only with the landowner and a series of consultants and a client that we are looking at a package of incentives. Today we have representatives from the consultant group that will provide you with an overview of not only the elements of the Brownfield Redevelopment Plan, and then after that we will yield to any questions that the board have and look to provide you with some more details as a $90 million proposed investment in the county. So I'd like to call up Luke Bonner from the Bonner Advisory Group, who is one of the consultants that is assisting with this project. Mr. Bonner.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
JP was sweating for us. Board of Commissioners, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to present. This project sort of epitomizes or personifies public-private partnership. There's a very short window of opportunity to put together a fairly large project on a fairly complicated property that you're all pretty aware of. The partners have been Macomb County Planning and Economic Development between JP and Jeff, Shelby Township with Rick Stathakis and Glenn Wynn, the development partners, which is Hillwood Company, represented here today by Greg Skovich. He's the one that's going to miss his flight, so we can actually take this as long as we want to. So that's already deemed he's missing his flight. And Sterling Group, which is Detroit-based. Hillwood is the regional office out of Chicago. AKT Peerless, who's represented here by Deanna Hutzel, and then myself from Bonner Advisory Group. It's one of those things where everyone literally joined hands and said, let's do this. And we've worked very quickly and very openly and very honestly with each other to move things forward. Just to reorient you in terms of what the site is, this brownfield plan encompasses the former Ford Visteon site. For the sake of the project's about 85 acres of that entire property. The site plan that's been submitted and essentially approved by Shelby Township provides for the potential of a 1 million square foot facility that has the opportunity for high employment growth. There's one more step in the process with Shelby Township, and that goes to their Zoning Board of Appeals on September 7th for a height variance on the building. I'd like to call up Deanna Hutzel from AKT Peerless so she can speak more intelligently to the environmental challenges on the property and what we're going to actually do in order to manage that environmental in order to make way for the development. So, Deanna.
Hi, I'm Deanna Hutzel with AKT Peerless. And I just want to speak a little bit to the environmental, as Luke mentioned. So the site is a former manufacturing facility, and those, since the 1950s, those operations resulted in soil and groundwater impact, notably some chlorinated solvents in groundwater that the owner is actively remediating. So to address that, the environmental response activities include environmental investigations to address due diligence for the potential purchasers. And after slab demolition, there's currently a slab in place on the property. After that's demolished, an active subslab depressurization system will be installed beneath the building. Direct contact barriers will be put in place on the exterior portions of the property. Stormwater management will be completed, including sealing the stormwater drains to prevent infiltration from impacted groundwater, dewatering and management of water during construction activities, and soil management during construction. Because the soil is impacted, it'll have to be handled appropriately.
Thanks, Deanna. The schematic you have on your screens, the pink and orange lines essentially show the extent of where that contamination goes and how that relates to the footprint of the building, the parking lot areas. And so there's quite a bit of soil remediation that has to take place. And then, as Deanna mentioned, there's a lot of precautionary measures that are put underneath the building and around the infrastructure that serve the building and public infrastructure to make sure none of that environmental contamination gets exacerbated. Now, the instrument for offsetting the costs related to cleaning up this site in order to make it viable for a redevelopment is the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority, which is administered by the Macomb County Board of Commissioners. Per the plan that was submitted, there's a little over $9 million of total eligible activities that go into the Brownfield plan in order to clean up the property to a certain level for the project to be built. In terms of the overall investment, we're anticipating roughly $20 million of machinery and equipment, around $60 million plus of real property investment, which is basically the building only. The acquisition price of the property is roughly $6.2 million. What we're expecting to occur, which actually sounds like it might be a little bit in line with the budget presentation, is about a 2.5% growth rate on land after the acquisition of the land and on the real property after constructed. And then we're assuming a standard depreciation schedule on the personal property that will be installed there. So on the tax increment financing assumptions, so the Brownfield Authority is based on a premise that once the project is built and producing new taxes that are greater than the taxes that were produced before, the Brownfield Authority captures those taxes and provides a reimbursement back to the developer for the costs that were incurred to redevelop the site. So we do make an assumption after speaking with Shelby Township that the project will qualify under their guidelines for a 12-year PA 198 industrial facility exemption certificate. That's basically a 50% tax abatement. The millages that are impacted under the Brownfield Authority include the townships, the county, HCMA, SMART, the community college, MISD, and the veterans millage. We're anticipating a 20-year term on the tax capture, which estimates a little over $10 million in capture, which covers the cost of the environmental activities on the site. Now, accompanied with the Brownfield plan is what we call a reimbursement agreement. The reimbursement agreement is between the Brownfield Authority and the developer, and essentially what that does is outlines the responsibilities of both parties in terms of performance and making sure that all of the proper information is submitted in order to be reimbursed. That includes the written statement detailing all the costs incurred, proofs that the costs are eligible activities, detailed invoices from the contractors, and the Brownfield Authority has the power to approve, review, and approve all invoices and process payments. And then just some additional considerations that are in that reimbursement agreement. In case, as we get into the project, more environmental contamination comes about than what was originally thought, we can go back and amend the plan to account for that. The developer and the eventual tenant will be reporting job and investment numbers on a regular basis. And there's also an opportunity to assign the Brownfield plan and reimbursement agreement to another entity or another third party to the actual development. So that is just kind of general overview of the high points of the project and what it's going to cost and the need for support from the county in order to make that happen. And I'm available for questions.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation. Are there questions from commissioners? No, we've got people. So, no. Yeah, good. It's not working, and I apologize to commissioners that I don't have a listing of who went in first. So let's start with Commissioner Kleinfeld.
Okay, let's see. I I want to make sure legally I'm asking the right question, but delicately. So was there was there a confidentiality clause here? Okay, so my only question is with regard to the resolution, there's no legal requirement to name or state on our behalf. I just want to make sure we're not doing something we can't do. And as long as there isn't, I'm fine with that. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Do we have other commissioners that had indicated they wanted to speak but are not appearing on our board? Commissioner Douget?
Thank you. That being said, this is gonna go in front of Zoning Board of Appeals for the height. Is there going to be any other problems with the height, width, length, or anything? Just the height, and that's it?
That's correct. The site plan, as I mentioned, was already approved by the township. Once detailed plans were submitted, there actually wasn't any concrete increase in the height of the building. It was actually what was constituting the portion of the building that was higher than the 40 feet limit, which is basically a decorative element.
Oh,
as part of
okay.
the building.
All right. So, pardon me?
A parapet wall.
All right. So this is not structural, this is, this has been in front of Zoning Board of Appeals and in front of Planning Commission, I imagine?
Shelby Township has approved the site plan.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Good to hear.
Thank you, Commissioner. Next up, we have Commissioner Romano.
Thank you, Chair. Two questions, if I may. First one regarding the, in the event that there's additional environmental problems with the property, is there a limit on what we could get on the hook for? I mean, I don't want to get in there and all of a sudden we get $10 million more in additional environmental problems. You're saying that in the event that there is, that you would come back for additional money. Well, how much money are you going to come back for is I guess my question, and your answer can't respond to that because you don't know. So is there a limit?
I don't know. Yes, there is a limit. The maximum term on a brownfield plan is essentially 35 years, 30 years of which is capturable for the project. 5 years could be captured by the authority for administrative expenses. So the term is 30 years.
I'm
That's
sorry,
maximum.
I don't understand.
Maximum is 30 years.
No, I'm asking about the environmental. If there's additional cost for environmental, is there a cutoff of what you're talking about as far as the cost for the environmental?
So we're saying the same thing.
Okay.
The maximum amount of years that you can capture is 30 years.
Right.
So right now we have 20 in this plan. So if there's additional
got it.
environmental activity that
Got it.
comes in, do you understand what I'm saying?
Okay. My other question is, actually, it's a question and a statement. How long, if this, and I'm sure it's going to be approved, but when we go for the recapture, what happens if this company goes belly up? I'm asking. I want to know what's going to
You
happen.
talking to the developer?
Yeah.
Well, given the track record, and certainly Greg Skovich is here from Hillwood Development. Hillwood's been around for quite some time,
So is General Motors.
over 100 years. Correct. This is a project that's not increasing or exacerbating contamination. What they're doing is solving the contamination issue. The project, I should say, the lease that's expected with the tenant of the building is a 15-year lease, which is bumping up against the time of total repayment.
Right.
So it's not anticipated, given the financial strength of this company and the financial strength of their tenant, that is something that's of concern.
Good. So I take it you'll give us a personal guarantee. Thank you, Mr. Bond.
Hey,
Last thing,
I have 2 kids. I'm not having any more, so I can't throw one of my
understand.
newborn into this.
So how long is this before we get to disclose? Because you're talking a lot of money here before we get to disclose the parties involved. I mean, is there a certain period of time that we can say to whoever wants to know that here's what's going in?
Yeah, well, the developer's Hillwood. We know Hillwood. In terms of the final details of the project, I'd say we're probably still, probably mid to late September away from having all those details finalized.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Bonner. Thank
You're
you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Next, we have Commissioner Leonetti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The previous occupant of the land, Vistian, right? Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Are they involved in any of the brownfield? Do they help pay for any of the costs involved?
Yeah, I'm gonna defer to Greg
Okay.
Skovich on that. Sorry, Greg.
Thank you, Commission, for
Yeah.
entertaining the Brownfield plan. Vistion is not on the hook. Ford has a covenant deed on the property, which basically holds them accountable for all of the existing contaminants on the property relative to the monitoring and the efforts associated with that. They did put in place a remediation plan within the last 5 years, and the groundwater monitoring efforts have shown that remedial effort is improving the quality of the groundwater. So, in an effort to expedite the cleaning operation, we're coming to the board with this plan.
Okay. So I understand that Ford. I'm going to assume they've negotiated something already so they can get out of it, or are they going to continue to monitor it once the property transfers? I mean, I guess my question is, it's Ford's land. It's where all the contaminants came from, theoretically. What can we expect from them, or do we have to worry about them bailing out of anything?
Not at all. We've been
Okay.
working hand in hand with Ford and MDEQ throughout this entire process. Ford has not made any suggestions that they're going anywhere. They understand and they acknowledge that the contaminants that are on site are theirs, and that they are going to be there to monitor and put in place efforts to address in the event that their responsibilities is exacerbated.
Okay, and so they're part of any reimbursement agreements or anything like that, or no, not at all? They're not part of that. Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Are there any other commissioners on the interested in speaking? Just a quick question then. You mentioned Ford Motor Company. Are they going to be reimbursing any of the local units of government for the, what is about $10 million cost of cleaning up their property so they could sell it for a higher price?
Ford does not own the property.
The Vistion then, the spin-off, or whoever.
Vistion does not own the property. Vistion sold the property 7 years ago to a salvage company that took down the vertical structure, who then subsequently sold it to the current owner, who we are purchasing it from.
I see. A lot of these, I didn't realize they'd gone through that many incarnations. And I know the Brownfield Development program, to my understanding, was developed particularly for parcels of property where you really can't trace where the responsible party may have been, over a period of time. And, it's not sure whether this fits that original, intent of the program, but it sounds like it's had a number of different owners. Are there any other commissioners with questions? No? All right. Seeing none, we... Okay, the motion passes. Thank you very much for your patience, gentlemen.